Then I will link it on the Moodle platform, right? Well, the
Okay.
idea is that we discuss some concepts I think that we haven't done so, right? As regards instructions, as regards different stages of the lesson, fine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, first of all, here the notes say that there are like different not stages, but moments in a lesson that are before the lesson, during the lesson, and after the lesson. Perhaps if we think about lesson planning, we are going to think about all of them. If we sort of adhere to a kind of, let's say, reflective practice, right? That will be after the lesson. And when we say after the lesson and there is a flow, in fact, between lessons, it's because what happens and your reflection on by the end of the lesson will pervade, let's say, or will pave the way for the next lesson to be planned, right? So when we say that the lesson plan is a set of notes, remember, I don't know whether we discussed this, okay, or not, Regina. Did we talk about a metaphor to describe a lesson plan? I don't remember if we did so. Mm-hmm. So
No, we
here
didn't
there are
because we
different, let's say, different images or pictures or ways of, let's say, depicting a lesson plan, such as a computer game, a series of road signs, an instruction leaflet, a photograph, a story, a roadmap, a written summary, or anything else you can think of. Tell me what you believe a lesson plan is.
The lesson plan could be as a guide or a map that a teacher must follow in order to develop the lesson.
Okay, Macarena, right?
I chose a road trip, a road map as well.
Okay. And what about, would you say there is a written summary?
Yes, could be, because according to the lesson plan, the teacher can like focus her or his attention on the main language content that have to be showed to the students.
Okay, sometimes the written summary may sound more of a kind of log that we are following, okay? Right? And perhaps in the written summary, you will have very, very few ideas as notes, and perhaps the procedures and some aspects that need more elaboration won't be, let's say, addressed. But, well, in fact, when we think about a lesson plan, we have to think about some ideas that will never be absent from our lesson, from our designs. And those are the aims and the procedures, right? Now, it says writing down the aims and the procedures for each stage of the lesson helps us to make sure that we have planned the best possible sequence to enable us to achieve those aims. That would be before the lesson. And then during the lesson, the plan can help the teacher to check timing, the amount of time we plan for each stage, and to check that the lesson is following the sequence and that we decided on. And after the lesson, we can keep the plan as a record of what happened, making any changes necessary. So that would be relating to reflection. And to show how the lesson was different from the plan. We can then use the plan and notes to help plan the next lesson. Okay, so the idea is that there will be a progression, right? And we will be following a kind of thread throughout the succession of lessons that we plan to give. Now, in the, well, if you take a look at the next page, that is page 92, you have some key concepts related to lesson plans. Now, when we, perhaps our ideal lesson plan and the one that we have devised with Laura, it's a bit more thorough in terms of some, let's say, items. But to have a general idea, we can say that first we need to know the level and the number of learners. And why do you think this is necessary?
It's crucial to know the level and the numbers in order to plan the lesson according to their needs.
Okay, and to their...
The level of understanding of the language is also very important.
Okay.
Exactly.
Remember, we spoke about something. Let me find activate the chat box. We spoke about input. Input. Oh, something is wrong. Input +1 and finely tuned input. Tell me if I have already developed this this idea, okay? Because I may be repeating myself. Okay, have I?
No.
No, no.
Any notes?
Okay. Finely tuned input has to do with the language the teacher gives to the student or exposes the students to, but this finely tuned input is in or at the level of understanding. That is to say, the students understand what you are saying. They wouldn't be puzzled, they wouldn't have to activate prediction or inferring. So this is a language they know and they can handle very well. Generally, when giving instructions and when writing, let's say, or designing activities, we tend to go more on the side of finely tuned input rather than the other. Okay? Whereas input +1 is what Vygotsky in a way describes as a zone of proximal development, right? What is that? Well, in fact, it is language that the students can understand, but not fully, right? So there will be new words, new structures, but by using their intuition, inference, right? Prior knowledge and background knowledge, they may understand. Now, it is not certainly under their level of production. That is to say, they won't be able to use that language, but they can understand it. Say, imagine you want to teach reporting commands and requests. Okay, so you start using, let's say, he asked me to, he told me not to, and you start telling any anecdote or whatsoever. The students will understand what you are saying, right? Because probably they will be familiar with the words asked, order, and then they know what an infinitive means and all that. So they will be able to understand what you're saying. They will follow you. But if you ask them to report an order or a request, they won't be able to do so because they cannot, let's say, they haven't worked on the grammar, right? So that is input plus one. And generally, the input plus one is the kind of language we use when we are going to expose the students to texts, listening, or recordings or video clips, where the students will have to devise their own strategies to cope with the situation. But we have to monitor our own input plus one, because we may, let's say, be too ambitious and then expose the students to language they cannot even decode. Okay, so this is where we have to be careful. And this is also related to giving instructions. Giving instructions. When giving instructions, we have to be as clear as possible. So the idea is, I would say, to use input plus one, but to scaffold everything we want the students to do by modeling, or by, when I say modeling, I mean giving them an example. Fine?
Yes.
Okay. Then, of course, the timetable fit is just for us to know exactly when and where specifically when the lesson takes place, but it also may be decisive in terms of motivation. Why not? Because it's not the same to teach a lesson on Friday at the very, very last hour than to teach a lesson on Monday.
Yeah.
It's not the same to give a lesson at 7 than to give a lesson at 10. Okay? Why?
Yes.
Because, well, and sometimes the timetable fit also specifies how often the students meet. So, do they have lessons on Mondays and Tuesdays? Do they have lessons on Mondays and Thursdays? So, how much will they remember if I have presented new language on Monday? Okay, so it has to do with that. That's why it is so important. Now, the aims. When we say aims, I would like you to take this into consideration for the future. A purpose and an aim. An aim, when we design lesson plans, will always be related to what the students will be able to do. And the purposes will be related to our own personal objectives. Okay? All right?
Okay, as teachers.
As teachers. Okay?
Yes.
In the lesson plan designs that we request you to do, to work on, we generally ask you to specify aims, not to specify the purposes. Can you wait for me, because I think that my dog needs to go to the patio.
Bathroom.
Okay? Give me a second.
Okay.
I'll be here. They will start barking soon, so I will have to open the door again. Okay. Well, so we make this distinction so as to be clear in this aspect, right? Aims for students, purposes for teachers themselves. Okay? Now, main aim, that has to do with what you want the students to be able to do by the end of the lesson. Then, subsidiary aims, they would be perhaps the aims that are more specific to every stage or activity you devise. We, in lesson plans, in Seminario de la Práctica Docente 2, we do not ask you to write aims for presentation, leading, warm-up. Why? Because they are always the same. Okay? Whereas in the activities, you are going to find more specific aims. Okay? Then, assumptions. Well, it has to do with what we believe, okay, the students already know. It's called assumptions. We call it lesson fit.
Okay.
And what is the lesson fit? We know that by this lesson, the students are able to or know how to describe objects, everyday objects, refer to the weather, or exchange information related to nationality, countries, date of birth, and occupations, say. Okay, so you say what the students already know. Then, but you may say, but do I have to do so? Well, in fact, you do it, but in general terms and perhaps related to what you mean to work on that lesson, okay? So it is related to that lesson. Because if you have to write all the contents that the students know, you need, I don't know, if you are in intermediate level, you need like chapters, right? Okay, yeah. Fine. Then, anticipated language problems is something that some teachers devise in order to tackle these, let's say, problems that may arise or confusions that the students may have when they are working, okay? My idea is not to specify them. We do not ask you to specify the language problems the students may have, right? That is not something we request you to do. Now, remember that there are different types of lesson designs, okay? Now, possible solutions to those problems, of course, okay, if you state them. And teaching aids, materials, or equipment. Probably that will be described at every section you write. So if you need posters, you are going to describe that in the procedure. You're going to say, well, we're going to show the students some flashcards. The flashcards will be upside down on my desk. They will have to come, pick one up, then reveal the picture, and then say something about it. So you state that in the procedure. Okay?
Yes.
Then, when we talk about teaching aids, can you reel some teaching aids, you know?
A song could be a teaching aid. For example, a song for teach the body parts.
To teach, okay.
Flashcards.
Okay.
I have a question, Sandra. In teaching aids also include, for example, the memo games or games in general in teaching?
Games, of course, there are different types of games, right? Materials is everything you are going to use, including resources, right? Flashcards, visual aids.
Okay.
And when I say visual aids, right? Let me write the word visual aid. Can you see that? Yes. When I say visual aid or visual aids, generally we use it in the plural. It means that it can be a poster, it can be a flashcard, it can be an image in the book, okay, in the textbook. It can be the blackboard or the whiteboard, okay? It could be. So if you, or a drawing, so it's like visual aids is very, very broad, right, as a term. Then you have different ones, different types of visual aids.
Okay.
I would say that even films and video clips, well, they are a combination, right? Because they are not just visual, they are auditory too. Okay. Then, what else? Well, we can say, then you can refer to equipment. And when we say equipment, we mean, for example, an MP3 player, the speaker,
A projector.
projector, okay. The board,
A book,
of course.
equipment?
Yes. Well, in fact, it's material, the textbook, okay.
Yeah. No, but books like novels, comics.
They are resources.
Okay.
Okay.
I would say that when we refer to the equipment, we are referring to physical things that are not just meant to be used to teach.
Okay.
Okay.
Have another uses. Okay.
That is to say, when you think about flashcards, generally they are meant for teaching.
Yes, to teach. Yes.
Okay. In fact, you can and a poster as well. Infographics, mind maps. Mind maps. They are also visual aids. Okay, and for example, you may have, let's say, different pictures, and then you may have a magnetic board. The magnetic board is a material. Okay. Because you can use a magnetic board for different things, just to keep a, let's say, track of the things you do in an office. It's not necessarily just for teaching. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
All right. So what about procedures? Well, there is when you're going to describe the activities and the tasks, if they are more complex activities. A task is like a set of activities you deal with, all right? And then we're going to study that. And well, and what type of activities and how you are going to grade them.
Okay.
And what is that? Generally, we tend to follow a sequence. And when I say a sequence, I mean we tend to follow a line in which we make progress from the simplest to the most complex, skills. And what do I mean by this? You're going to request the students to elaborate, let's say, mental processes that are meant to be more demanding every time you progress into the different number of activities. So activity number 1 should be simpler than activity number 2 and number 4.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Then we have timing. Why do you think timing is important?
To manage the steps or the stages for the class. For example, it's important to establish different periods of time for the different activities in order to fulfill all the topics that we want to cover in this lesson.
Okay, right. Yes, that is important. That is important. And in fact, it keeps track of the time available. And it avoids, let's say, sometimes stagnation on one, let's say, section. It helps you strike a balance, right? Because sometimes you may say, well, I would like to work on this reading activity, and then you have devised like too many questions, or you devote too much time to the same interaction pattern. That is to say, the students, let's say, talking to you and you talking to the students, right? And the students are not interacting. So the timing helps you, let's say, strike a balance. So you measure, once you have finished designing the lesson plan, you take a look. In activity number 1, the interaction pattern is student-student, and it lasts around 10 minutes. Activity 2, student-teacher or teacher-student, right? And it lasts 5 minutes. Well, that's okay, because I mean, the idea is that the students speak more than you, than work and interact with each other more than you. But if you have 10 or 15 minutes activities in which the students will be only talking to you and they will not be interacting, then, I mean, you will be somehow centering the lesson on the interaction with the teacher rather than with their peers. Okay?
Yes.
Any questions?
Not yet.
No? Marilyn, I am recording the lesson.
Thank you.
So if you have missed part of it because I saw you were off, right? I guess that it's the connection, the online connection that is not good enough. Then I will be uploading this. Okay?
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
All right. All right. Well, what about interaction patterns? And what are the interaction patterns? I mean, the type of communication that takes place at the different stages. Generally, in the lead-in, right? The teacher interacts with the students, asks questions, elicits information. But then, as we move forward, there will be different types of activities and participation. So it may be individual, it may be in pairs, in groups, as a whole class, and then you may have patterns such as student-teacher. Then it could be students and the teacher. Okay. Yes, sorry, the enter, right? And it could be student to student, that is to say, in pairs or in groups. That much depends on what you design. Okay? Or it may be that there is no pattern and it's just individual. So the idea is that we monitor ourselves in terms of how varied the interaction patterns are. Okay?
Yes.
Any questions? Please, if there is something that is not clear, you have to ask me. Okay? No questions so far?
No.
No? Oh, okay. Then, well, homework, that is something that much depends on the type of work you are doing. Well, then I think I have asked you to read these notes, haven't I?
Yes.
So I just want to go over, I'm not going to go over the key concepts of the language teaching classroom because these are samples, right? Now, take a look at the aids and the materials. Which are the ones that you can, let's say, mention? You have magazine pictures, whiteboard, overhead projector, that is something, the old, let's say, media projector. Now, it used to be called overhead projector but it didn't depend on computers, right? It depended on transparent, like transparent sheets of paper. They were a kind of paper that was transparent. I don't know if you have ever seen one.
No.
They were very expensive. And then photocopies, right? How do you call, if you give the students, if you want to give the students a bingo, how do you call the papers? With the numbers or the words or the pictures? For example,
I don't think I know that answer in Spanish even.
great. Agreed.
Agree.
You may need a grid. Okay. Well, and then of course, when you devise the materials, you have, if you are going to give them grids, you have to count how many grids you will need. Fine. Great. Well, interaction pattern, pair work, teacher and whole class. And how do you imagine that? How is this
Playing game.
teacher whole class?
Oh, when you explain a new subject or when
Okay,
you are
be careful with the word. Subject,
okay,
what do you mean?
a new
Language
Language
content.
content.
Yes. Okay. Well, the idea is to avoid saying that you explain. The idea is to model, demonstrate, expose the students to new language. Okay?
Yeah.
okay.
Cristina, yes, the idea is that. Okay, and what else? We have first group, second group, new groups pattern. What is that? How do you picture, how do you imagine that?
When students are organized in small or large groups and have to present themselves a topic or a presentation, for example, I don't know, vacations, holiday, family.
Yes, I used to say the groups interact and they may ask one group, let's say, speaks or presents, and the other groups may, let's say, ask questions about the presentation. Okay, so you see that the teacher there is going to be in the shade, all right, and in the shadows. And that is the idea. But that can happen, I mean, very frequently. In fact, we can, let's say, we can give the students a main role in the lesson, but you have to help them get used to it. Because, in fact, one of the assumptions that most learners have, and it's not just adult learners, but is that the teachers are providers. And we would say that they are not providers, they are meant to be facilitators. Okay?
Yes.
Right? Well, now what about, let's move a little bit forward. On page 94, there was a task. Yes? Okay, so the idea is that to see if you were able to work it out.
Okay.
Well, for lesson plan, we have lesson plan headings. Timetable fit. Which is the one you devised for the timetable fit? A, B, C, D, or E?
Can you say the headline again? Because I don't
Yes.
think I have that.
It is on page 94. It says follow-up activity. Some of the teacher's notes for this lesson plan are missing. Put the notes A to E in the correct places in the plan.
Oh, yes.
Have you found that?
Yes.
I don't know, where is it?
On page
Because I have printed the photo that I took the first class.
Yes, but it was it says page 94.
I will check on WhatsApp.
Let me yes, because the idea was that we corrected that. Let me take a copy, a photo, and I'll send it to you on the chat.
Okay, thank you.
But that is part of the same. Okay, can you see it?
Uh-huh. Ah, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Isn't the option B? Students listen to the model story, then in groups plan and write their own stories.
Wait a second, because we are in number 1, timetable fit. In timetable fit number 1, do you think it means students listen to the model story, then in groups plan and write their own stories? Is that telling you the timetable fit?
No.
No. Have you done that, Regina and Guillermo? I don't know if he...
You know that I didn't saw that picture because I took pictures of all the pages.
I
And I
see.
cannot even read the
I didn't see.
detail.
Okay. Right.
I didn't see, but I cannot see now the task because it's out of focus, the picture.
Okay. So do you want me to create 2 breakout rooms for you to work on this? In 5 minutes, you work it out and we check it?
Okay.
Please.
Because I don't want you to be guessing, right? I want you to have enough time to think about it. I mean, it's not big deal, in fact. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
And while you are doing that, okay, what I will do is I'm going to make some photos. I'm going to take photos with my cell phone, and I'm going to upload, right, a couple of, let's say, copies that I want to start working on with you, okay?
Okay.
So I'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay.
Let's see if I can click on. Five minutes. Okay, there will be a counter, right?
Okay.
To let you know, but the thing is that I don't know whether Guillermo is he connected?
I am here.
Yes,
me?
okay. Okay.
Uh,
Right.
I just arrived.
Yes. Anyway, Guillermo, we are recording the lesson.
Okay.
Okay, so I will be uploading this, right? With a link for you, just if you want to check what we have been working on. Now we are going to work on module 2 from the TKT book that you took pictures of when we were in the first lesson. We're going to check the activity. That is the follow-up activity before the reflection. Perhaps you have already done it, okay? So maybe you can discuss with your partner, okay?
Okay.
All right. So join the groups. Were you able to work in rooms or not?
Yes.
Yes. Were you able to work in the rooms or not? Basta, basta. Are you here? Yes. Okay, can you hear me? Yes? Fine.
Yes.
Well, let's see what you have picked up here.
Okay. Can I start?
Yes, please. Timetable
Okay.
sheet. That is number 1. What do you think it is?
With Regina, we wrote and we thought that could be a sentence D, to follow on from work on past tenses and to prepare for storytelling projects.
That's it. Okay, you got it. What about main aim?
Is E, to make sure that board writing is clear and readable.
Main aim.
Main aim.
I don't think so. Is that the main aim of the
Didn't we say
lesson?
A? I'm sorry.
That's it.
thought
I understood
agree.
E. I understood
I-
E.
I thought we agreed on A to enable students to use past tenses accordingly.
Yes, fine. I understood E.
Okay.
That's why.
Okay.
Yes, I got confused.
Great,
B.
great. And what about personal aims?
Personal aims. E. That is E. To make sure. That was the problem.
Yes, that is to say the teacher, perhaps she believes that she's not clear when she writes on the board, or the display that she prepares is it's a bit messy. So she has made the point of trying to improve that. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Right. And then we have possible solution. Well, of course, you have students can already form tenses accurately. Well, that is an assumption that is really ambitious, pretentious, let's say. And students, for anticipated language problems, we have students may use present tenses instead of past tenses. Okay? So what could be a possible solution for that?
With Regina, we agreed that is sentence C, use gesture to remind students to use past tenses.
Can you give me an example? But I need you on the camera.
Oh, yes. For example, when we are, I don't know, teaching routines or actions, and for example, we use the verb get up and we do the gesture of getting up
Well, but that is prompting.
Okay.
Oh, that is mimicry. What we mean is that a possible solution is to use gestures to address the past. Can you show me how you would do it or how this teacher would do it?
Oh my gosh. Hello.
Hello.
I will do.
Yes, that is what we
Like-
do.
Yes.
Okay.
Or when we are teaching.
Yes, it has to do with, I mean, the use of the hands. That we start like we look crazy, but we do this, especially because of our Latin American origin, that we Latin Americans use the hands to speak a lot. So imagine teachers. Okay. Well, in fact, it's that. Or, for example, as you were saying, Macarena, if they miss the S in the simple present, for example, the or
What is missing?
or pulling faces. Okay.
Guillermo wrote on the chat over the shoulders.
Yes. Okay. Well, that is difficult to describe on the chat.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. But, and in a way, this signal helps the student to work it out. And you are not providing them with the language. That is to say, you sort of somehow signal that there is something missing or something is wrong and give the opportunity for the student to correct himself or herself, of course, right? That is a technique.
Yes.
And when we say correction is not the same as prompting. Remember, we always say that there are words that are similar, but they are not the same in teaching, right? And the example you gave, Macarena, perhaps in an activity, it could be more prompting than correction. Can you think of, I mean, what might the differences be between correction and prompting, by the way?
Prompting, if I'm not mistaken, is when the teacher takes the role as a performer. It means use gesture or use mimics in order to express what he or she is doing it or trying to show to their students. And correction, maybe, I don't know, like trying to cause in the student to start thinking critically or try to give them the opportunity to recognize her or himself their mistakes.
That's a way of correcting.
Okay.
I mean, correction is when the teacher spots a mistake and somehow she makes the student notice it. Now, you may say sorry, you may make gestures, you may correct it, or you may say no.
Okay.
Right? Well, those are there are different techniques to error correction that that we discussed with the students the other day in in the group that we meet on Mondays. And in fact, I promised to find some material about that because I would like you to be ready for that. It's not something that you should do for next week, but it would be a good idea for you to be acquainted with this, right? For the second half of the year, in which you will have to correct students when they are participating, perhaps.
Yes.
But prompting, perhaps, is what the teachers do in order to help the students to get a word or to use a word, not because they have made a mistake, but because they cannot recall it, right? Or they seem not to remember. Okay? So imagine you say the first syllable. Oh, after I don't know, I missed the bus, and I had to wait for 1 hour for the next one. I was so, and the teacher says, frustrated
Okay.
teacher. Okay, that's a prompt.
Okay.
Hmm? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Then, for example, talk about your routine, and the students say, I have breakfast before, and you do this, and you are prompting them to use get up. Okay, so that's
Okay.
why, I mean, there is a distinction between prompting and correction. In prompting, there isn't precisely a mistake, but perhaps a gap,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sometimes the prompts are like guides or words that act as a stimuli, right? And you, okay, I say, well, I'm going to say a word, and you have to say something related to that word without using the word.
Okay.
So I say spring. Oh, I can see flowers. We celebrate
Butterfly.
day, and they say things about it, but they are not supposed to use spring. Okay. So you
Yes.
may have a prompt on a piece of paper, on a slip of paper, right, for the students to say, to give information to their classmates, to a group, and make a guessing game.
Okay.
So you have the prompt or the clue. That's another way of calling this word, keyword, that will lead them to use certain language, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And
Clear.
then you have visual prompts that have to do, sometimes it's not written language, but they may be, you may think of emojis. Okay, so now they are using the emojis a lot for the students to say things, right?
Could it be used?
Sorry?
Memes? Because they
Yes.
use a lot of memes now.
But the thing is that in the memes, you have phrases.
Yes,
But
generally,
it
yes.
could be a meme, for example, that is incomplete. And they are supposed to work out part of the meme.
Good
Okay?
idea.
Right? Yes, they like it. All right. And there are some memes that have become classic, let's say, strips. For example, the one of Batman, right, and Robin.
All the
Then,
Spider-Man seeing each other.
yes, yes, yes. Then Mirta Legrand, right?
Yes.
She has become a meme. Or, I mean, there are some that are really, let's say, witty, right? I really like them. They are very, very nice, very funny. And I have discovered as a resource the reels. I don't know if you have delved into this, but there are many reels that, I mean, sometimes they are cartoons, sometimes they are family situations, sometimes they are famous people telling anecdotes in a sort of a lounge, all right, with in the format of an interview, and they're great sources. Okay,
Yes.
I
They
keep
will be
saving things on
real.
Instagram.
Yes, I'm sorry. This would be materials.
Yes.
But we were talking.
Yes, because they have not been created for teaching purposes.
Exactly.
That's why they are not resources, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Now, and then the copy, have we covered all of them or not? Sorry.
I think yes.
7, so 7 we said it was C, you read, use gestures to remind students to use past tenses, and we ended up talking about correction and prompting. And the very, very last one, that is number 8, okay, that is, finally, it's the last one, but you just read it if you want, is what letter?
B.
B, okay.
B.
Mhm. Right, that is to say, students listen to the model story, then in groups, plan and write their own stories. From, I have asked you to, I have sent you on the chat 2 pages that belong to a chapter 1 of the book Lessons Learned, okay, that is in the set of books, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is on Moodle. Yes, and this is page 27. I'm going to ask you to read the whole chapter, and we're going to discuss some ideas about learners, teachers' role. Okay, that is the main, my main concern in connection to motivation and students' needs. But I thought that today, as we have half an hour, right, we can go over what we call language levels, right, and grasp, let's say, an idea of what they mean, and let's say, why not the beliefs that lie behind them. Perhaps you have seen this acronym that I'm going to write. Before.
Yes, Common European Framework is the level of
Framework of reference for languages.
languages.
This is like a statement, in fact, that divides the competence somebody has on a language into, let's say usage, right, and communication skills. Now, you have different levels, and here the levels are described as A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2. This is, let's say, a way of categorizing levels according to competence or competencies, right? Then there is another way of describing the level that the students, let's say, have attained. And perhaps you remember this. I'm going to use, perhaps before that, then we have I'm awful at writing. I'm really bad at writing on the chat. Then we have advanced. Why not? This is another way of describing it.
Yes.
I would say that starter, beginners, intermediate, advanced, and proficient have to do with the degree of expertise that the level, let's say, the students have, right? But it's like broader. What's the difference between starter and beginner?
Started is like a very, 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 very basic level. Like they start learning very basic things like the colors and the numbers.
You start from scratch,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Whereas in beginners, and generally when we say beginners, we omit saying false beginners. And what is that? False beginners are the ones who have been exposed to language informally. They many years ago or many years before that lesson, okay? That you don't even have like a basic command of the language, but there are probably more, let's say, there is knowledge that is related more to vocabulary rather than anything else. I would say that false beginners are the ones that know quite a lot of vocabulary, but they cannot put it together, right, efficiently. So they know the numbers, they know the colors, they know the nationalities and the countries, but sometimes, I mean, they don't know how to make a question, how to describe something, because they lack the organization of the language, right? If we think about language areas, not about the skills, okay? Right? So let's start upside down. I mean, different from what the book states. And let's start by the basic user. This table and this framework, in fact, is organized into can-do statements. So, who can read A1? Marilyn or Macarena or Regina, please. A1.
Okay. Basic user, A1. Can understand and use familiar everyday expressions
Oh, I
and
lost
very
you.
basic phrases. Can introduce him or herself. I continue.
I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, maybe it's my connection. Well,
Mm-hmm.
can introduce him or herself and others and can ask about personal detail such as where he or she lives, people he or she knows, and things he or she has.
Okay, so remember, Macarena, details. Okay, details.
Okay.
And if we read the second, A2, it says, can understand basic sentences and frequently used expressions. Can communicate with simplicity on familiar topics and can describe his or her background. Do you see many differences between one and the other?
Maybe the A2 level has a better manage of the language, is more independent because it says use expressions. That is an ability that A1 cannot do.
Okay, use and frequently used expressions, whereas the other is just basic phrases. I would say that probably the difference you can tell it from the length of the ideas and sentences that they can express and the connectors they use to link ideas.
Connectors.
To make a flow, all right? To provide some kind of flow to their, let's say, speaking, to their writing. And of course, then we can think of the intake, that is to say, what they can comprehend.
Okay.
Now, I would say that these descriptors, in fact, focus mainly on the productive skills rather than on the receptive. Okay? Because they are concerned with the output of language, right? Rather than the level of understanding. Now, I would say that it has to do with this. It is in the discourse management where you see the main difference between the A1 and the A2, which in fact they are very slight. Different kinds of competencies, right? Now, if we move up, right, further up, then we have independent user. Now you have two levels, B1 and B2. If I think about this into the other scale, okay, into the other scale, we may think of, let's say, levels, and within these levels, there are sub-levels. And this is what Guillermo wrote. So you have, for example, starters and beginners for the basic, okay? And for the intermediate, right, or the independent user, you may have lower and upper intermediate. Okay, lower and upper intermediate. So let's read B1. Okay, I'm going to read it. Okay, it says, in B1, they can understand the main points of familiar matters in different topics such as work, school, and leisure, etc. They can deal with most situations while traveling and can produce simple connected text on familiar topics. Okay? Right? Now, whereas B2 has to do with can understand the main ideas of complex texts. So there we know that the input becomes more demanding, including technical discussions in his or her field. And what is technical discussions? Well, you are able to describe things in detail. So if you see a picture, right, of a landscape, you know how to distinguish by the riverside, let's say, the coast, the bay, right? You can call mountains and differentiate them into hills, gullies, and cliffs. You see, that is what we understand by technical. Don't you confuse it with technical language that has to do with industry or a certain jargon, right, or of a certain field. No, it has to do with being able to spot, let's say, more than the general picture. Okay. Then we have can interact with native speakers without major difficulties and can produce clear, detailed texts on a wide range of subjects. So they can talk about different topics and they will manage. Okay. Even to be clear, precise when describing or explaining something. Whereas the proficient user is the one that, let's say, resembles somehow somebody who is a native. I would say that the difference between the C1 and the C2 is very slight, the same as the starter and the beginner. Then we have, in C1, we say we can understand a wide range of difficult, longer texts, can express him or herself fluently and spontaneously without much searching for expressions, can use language flexibly and effectively for social, academic, and professional purposes, can produce clear, well-structured, detailed text on complex subjects. Any let's say, I would say that the C1 can handle register and adjust it in the different situations he's, let's say, faced or she's faced with. So it's not just a matter of register in terms of formal, informal, or neutral, but it has to do more with, let's say, fields of expertise and sensitivity to the language, that you know when to use informal language and idiomatic expressions, let's say, in the right way. So everything you use resembles somehow the way language occurs colloquially and academically. All right?
Yes.
Now, somebody that is C1 uses phrasal verbs and idioms. Okay? Naturally, without thinking about them. And the thing is that the C1 and the C2 is not monitoring his language any longer. Can produce the language without, oh, I'm going to use this, or I want to say this. I mean, it's just a flow.
Naturally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you even develop a sensitivity to mistakes or collocations that you know it's wrong, so you don't use it that way because you just know. It's not that you studied it in the textbook,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then C2, perhaps it has to do with little hesitation when speaking, almost no mistakes, right, in terms of slips, right, or fossilized mistakes. The speech is generally, let's say, full of discourse markers, references. Okay. It's when you start understanding the lyrics to the songs. For example, have you ever listened to this song?
Yes, I think.
Okay. Right. Wonderwall is it's a song, right? That is a classic. Okay. And in fact, it speaks about a boy that in a way he was in a relationship in which he was very much isolated and couldn't, let's say, see much of what was happening around. And in fact, Wonderwall is addressing this. Only somebody who is, let's say, immersed in the culture of the language will understand the resemblance. Because it's not just a phonetic thing that is playing with the word, but it's also the way you use it. What is your wonder world? What is the wonder world you have? Well, that is like the perfect place for you. I mean, a place where fantasy and perfection play a part is what everybody's seeking, right? But in a way, they use Wonderwall as I'm playing with the word, right? This is called pun, right? In English. Play upon words, right? When you play with the sound of the words and what they mean. Okay, the Beatles used to do that too. And in fact, the name of the band has to do with this. Okay. right?
Yes.
In fact, there are many jokes that you cannot explain in Spanish because they have to do with the pronunciation.
Yes. Mhm.
Many things, okay? Why? Because English gives you that possibility. As it is not a phonetic language, then you can play with the sounds, right?
Mhm.
There is on Instagram, there is one account that is called Pan, okay? And there is another one that is called Language Nerds. And sometimes they, from time to time, they post, that's what I mean, many of them. And then there is another that is Hip Ticked. Follow this one, this is great. I don't know, it's an account. There are people behind this. They post alternative dictionary definitions. I don't know if you have ever seen it. Oh no, they are great because, I mean, it's humorous. Yes, that's it, Guillermo. Yes. Yes, that's it. Okay, that's a pan, right? Follow these accounts on Instagram, and you will see. I mean, how many things you can say and mean with the fact that English is a simple language, but apart from that, playing with the sounds. Okay, and that has to do with C1 and C2 level. Two concepts that I want to go over before we linguistic competence and communicative competence. They are not the same. I'll give you 1 minute to try to think of words connected to the linguistic competence and words connected to communicative competence. It could be words or it could be concepts.
Okay.
Okay, 1 minute, no more than that. Okay. Ready? Linguistic competence. I don't think I got what you mean, Michelle. Okay, what about other contributions? And then we'll ask Guillermo to be more specific.
Mhm. Could it be communicative competence, be able to chat with someone? Have a conversation?
Oh, well, but that's too general.
Okay. Chat about
I
the
mean,
weather.
have a conversation about what? Because everybody can have a conversation, okay? Anybody can do it.
Okay. Be able to buy in a supermarket.
Mhm. Okay, well, that's communicative. Uh-huh.
Um,
And linguistic?
I think in a way that linguistic and communicative are the same, but maybe linguistic competence has to be more to manage accurately the language. It means distinguish when you have to be formal, when you have to be informal. In that sense, I don't know if it is
I
correct
don't
or
think
not.
so. No, that has to do more with the levels, okay, of proficiency you have. You become like more aware of all this. That has to do with language awareness, what you are describing, Macarena. Okay, language awareness is when you really know what language to use in certain situations or with certain speakers. So,
Okay.
are you going to use must, ought to, should? Okay, and you decide.
Okay. Yes.
All right.
Mhm.
And I would say that's more or less the same thing that applies to the example that Guillermo gave us. It has to do with language awareness, not with linguistic competence. Linguistic and communicative. They are not, let's say, different concepts. That is to say, they can live together as a couple. And in fact, the idea is that they do, right? Now, the problem is that mainly in some, let's say, teaching, areas or in some teaching models, why not models, I would say, or programs, the emphasis is on the linguistic competence. So, if I ask a teacher, what do your students know? She would answer simple present, can, could, must, modal verbs related to the future. She would say vocabulary about feelings, illnesses. Okay, so it's like the linguistic competence somehow embraces the areas of language. That is to say, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Whereas the communicative competence is more associated to the skills and the sub-skills, of course, okay? That are somehow directly derived from input and that are somehow seen or shown in the output. You see?
Yes.
And you may say, what does it mean? Well, it's in fact, if I have to describe them in very simple terms, I would say that The linguistic competence describes what your students know about the language. Okay? Whereas the communicative competence somehow describes what the students can do with the language. What can they do? They can describe people, right, in their families. They can talk about their families and their routines. They can somehow sketch out information related to their biographies, personal biographies. Okay, so it's, I mean, it is what you have just seen where? In the descriptors of the students' levels. Okay. Generally, it's not that we are doing away with vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar. No, not at all. But the thing is that all those areas of language are studied, right, and are developed, okay, within the target of communication. There are situations in which this grammar, this vocabulary, and these pronunciation patterns are, let's say, drawn. They do not become the starting point. So it's not, I'm going to teach a simple present. No, you're going to teach what? Personal information, likes and dislikes, then perhaps routines, timetables, why not? All those aspects of language or situations that are related to language use a simple present and some other tenses too. So it has to do with what you can do with the language, rather than the rule you know about the simple present. Okay, do you see the difference?
Yes.
Now, what they do nowadays, in the most of the textbooks, they set aims and all that, and this is what we are going to work. But on Wednesday, I need you to read, okay, this chapter number 1, and to have these files that I uploaded, okay?
The samples?
Yes, just see if you can have them. I mean, you can print them if you want or not. They are two, and one is the student's book and the other is the teacher's book. Okay, they seem similar, but they are not exactly the same. When we discuss the roles of the teacher, we're going to see this into deep. Okay, but I need you to go over those notes before. So the idea is this. I mean, language in textbooks nowadays have a communicative goal, all right? But that doesn't mean that they are doing away with linguistic competence. No, not at all. They are incorporating the linguistic competence as an aid to host and to boost learning. And they use, when I say learning, the use of the language communicatively. Okay?
Yes.
Are these concepts clear?
Yes. Yes. Now, yes.
Any other questions?
No.
No? Guillermo, do you want to write something? Do you want to ask? Oh, is he there? Yes, yes, he is. I can see him. Or Marilyn? Okay, so see that in a way, perhaps it will be a bit difficult for us to change let's say, our minds in terms of what we understand by language. But what do you think language is? Is it a set of rules and a list of words? Okay, or language is your ability to understand, to be able to, let's say, enjoy, right? Understanding and being able to express yourself in the target language. Okay, it has to, in fact, the communicative competence is fully aware of the culture. But not the culture of the people who live who speak English, because in fact you will read about English as a lingua franca.
Yes.
All right. Well, so I'll see you on Wednesday. All right. I'm not having lessons on Monday with the other group because I have a special board for niveles de idioma. I have to be at normal school on Monday. So I will be meeting you. I'm asking you to read, right, the whole chapter.
Okay.
From lessons learned.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to discuss especially motivation and learners' roles, and we're going to start working with these copies from their samples that I took from Macmillan publisher. I really like the books that they are, let's say, offering, because they are really somehow I would say that most of the authors that write for or publish in Macmillan, they deal with language and cognitive skills. So there is a lot of critical thinking, a lot. So, and that's important nowadays, really. Okay?
Okay.
Well, thank you for going online. All right. Well, I don't know. Now it's cloudy again and very windy. Maybe the rain will come later, right? But well, I really thought that there was going to be a storm, right? But then, well,
That's okay.
So unstable, right? Sorry if it was
Okay.
inconvenient for you to do it this way, right? But my intentions were the best. Okay. All right.
That's okay.
Okay.
Okay, Sandra.
All right. See you next week.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.